Hello, so today we're going to be talking about Chapter 19, the Barbary Pirates, and my name is Caden Rivera. So the early modern Maghreb. So the early modern Maghreb had sea-hugging city-states and tribal enclaves, which enclaves are a portion of territory within or surrounding larger territory whose inhabitants are different um, from their surrounding neighbors. So that could be culturally, ethnically, like they're just different. Um, so they had sea-hugging city-states and tribal enclaves that went from Morocco to modern-day Libya. They were Islamic and sympathetic to Ottomans. No Maghrebi city fell completely in Sultan power. The threat to Christian Europe. Greatest threat to the Maghreb region was Christian Europe. Um, Christian Europe merchants traveled to Africa in search of gold and slaves. Um, Spain did invade North Africa, but they couldn't hold on to the outposts that they gained, so they ultimately lost them. Where and when did sea banditry flourish? So it was after the 1500s that sea banditry grew. It prospered in what Europeans called the Barber or Barbary Coast, which, as you can see um, in the map here, um, it would be modern day Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. Um, and we're going to talk later, but the common uh, hosts were Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, and um, yeah, those are the common like outposts that they had that will be talked about. So the pirate leaders. So early pirate leaders included Ulrich Rees and Hayreddin Barbarossa. They were two brothers. So pictured on the left is Hayreddin Barbarossa. He was an Albanian Ottoman admiral, sorry, excuse me, who was born around 1478 on the island of Lesbos, Greece. And pictured on the right is his older brother, Ulruk Rees, who was also an Albanian Ottoman. And as I said, he was the brother of Hayreddin. Um, Ulruk was born 1474 in Lesbos, Greece as well. Um, they were brothers who settled in Algiers and ruled it from 1516 to 1546. The Barbarossa brother raids. So the Barbarossa brothers were famous for their raids on the coast of Italy. Um, their combined forces with neighboring Tunis to launch attacks and share booty, which was also what they called loot. Um, Regional jealousies prevailed, and the cities again competed, so they became jealous of each other, and then it led them to start fighting and attacking each other. So, how did the brothers become a household name? So, they focused on capturing merchant vessels at sea, but what made them such a big name was their land attacks and kidnappings. So, Hayreddin did have ties to Ottoman. Um, he strengthened his ties to the Ottoman, but he never fully became uh, like he never fully succumbed to their orders, the Sultan orders. The decline of Ottoman sea power in 1580. So, an important factor of the decline was an increased lack of ability of power of sultans. So they didn't have that much power. Therefore, they weren't able to grow, so it eventually led to their decline. Um, as Ottoman power decreased in 1580, Atlantic shipping ballooned, and other pirate bases started popping up along the west coast of Morocco. So, with the Ottoman downfall, more pirate bases um, started popping up, and that eventually led to pirate bases growing, and what we will talk about further, which would be extortion and uh, hostage taking. Um, the pirate bases along the west coast of Morocco, pirate attacks on Spanish and Portuguese shipping, financed, and sometimes were manned by exiled Iberian Jews and Muslims. They had to, take care of all the things that they were, taken by the pirates and like forced to do these things. Some such foreign-born pirates were involved in European courts, acting as double agents and seeking support for pretender to the Spanish-held Portuguese throne. So they would kind of play double sides, um, wanting to get information, but also being part of the European courts. The others who weren't involved in this were outlaws, hoping to get rich on the expense of their former tormentors. So anyone who did them wrong, they tried to um, become like they tried to get back at them. They tried to get more money, well, more loot and stuff from them. Morocco's Berber tribes. So aside from the vengeful European renegades, a number of Morocco's seafaring Berber tribes engaged in piracy, which is attacking and robbing ships at sea, and extortion, which is obtaining something, most commonly money, through force or a threat. So it could be like they're forcing their way onto the ships, or it could be them threatening the people on the ship to give them money or whatever they wanted in exchange for them to leave them alone. A lot of young men came of age beneath the pirate flag, so a lot of young men um, they became pirates. That's the life that they chose to live. Mughrabi's sophisticated business. So by the time Miguel de Cervantes was held captive in Algiers in the late 1570s, Maghreb hostage trafficking and extortion rackets became their biggest business. So they made their most money and profits off of hostage trafficking, which is, taking people against their will and and taking money money or whatever they wanted by force or threat. So in this picture on the left, we can see a man getting money from a person in exchange for some people that they have held captive. So these were most likely slaves, or people that they forced to do labor, and they would, often sell them to other people who wanted them. Pirates did use swift sailing vessels and state-of-the-art European guns to steal money and merchandise, but what they were really focused on was kidnapping Christian Europeans. They were That's where all their money came from. The kidnapping of Christian Europeans. So pirates mostly kidnapped Christian Europeans, mostly men and women of high status. They did this to get money out of their families. So some hostages were mistreated and forced to do hard labor, as shown in the picture on the left. They did beat them. They did put them to do manual labor. Most of the hostages were allowed to send letters to relatives on the other side of the Mediterranean in hopes that they would get enough ransom money to be set free. The ransom of Christian captives held in cities such as Algiers and Tunis was organized by Catholic religious orders. They collected sums as far away as Spanish America to free men and women whose relatives in Spain, Italy, and France, and elsewhere could produce no ransom. So they were looking for money from everywhere. It didn't matter. They were trying to get everyone's relatives to give them money in exchange for their uh, taken relative. The Barbary Coast extortion. Uh, it included safe. It included selling safe passage to European shippers. So what they did was they promised not to kidnap or steal any of their merchandise or anyone in exchange for a sum of money, some firearms, and shipbuilding materials. So whatever they needed to build their ships, whatever they needed to protect themselves, they asked for that in exchange um, for not kidnapping. Northern European merchant deals. So there were they were more answerable to shareholders than kings after 1600s. They struck many deals with the sultans and tribal leaders in Maghreb in exchange for a safe passage, again meaning that none of their items would be taken, no one would be taken hostage. At first, the Maghreb leaders were mostly welcoming the Protestant newcomers because they had access to better weapons and they shared the hatred of Catholic Iberians. So they didn't. They were welcoming of them because they could use their weapons and they had the same hatred. But failure to failure to pay for protection still led to harsh reprisals. So like they would still get the same treatment as they would anyone else. Just because they had the same hatred and they had things doesn't mean that they were free from getting the same treatment. Like everyone was still the same. Pirate raids in the English Channel. So some pirates raided as far as the English Channel in the early 1600s. Thousands of northern Europeans languished in jails of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli. I couldn't find a picture to show how the jails looked. Maybe there is one and I couldn't find it. But I did want to show that. I couldn't find a picture. England, France, and the Netherlands funded permanent embassies in these and other competing city-states, but their primary purpose was to gather information and keep Muslim princes happy, not to seek the release of unlucky Christian subjects. So they didn't care too much about the Christians, as said before, like Christians were the Christian Europeans were being held captive and stuff. So they didn't really care too much about the Christian people. They didn't care about, you know, their well being. They mostly cared about keeping Muslim princes happy and gathering information to fuel that happiness. So, again, Christian Europeans weren't cared about too much during this time.